Hi, and welcome into the Crossroads webinar here at Wavetronics. My name is Chase Clark, and I work in the marketing department, and I'm involved in helping people find out about our Crossroads solution for traffic simulation. Before I begin talking about Crossroads, I'd like to real quick get into why Wavetronics. Who are we and why we do what we do? So Wavetronics has existed and been around since the year 2000. We've been creating all sorts of radar traffic solutions since then. The story of Wavetronics is we had two founders that were both radar professors at Brigham Young University, and they had a vision for a solution to do vehicle detection in the road in a non-intrusive way, right? To get away from the traditional loop or the camera, we offered an option that was range-based detection, and we were thinking of something we could do to make the roads of America safer and more efficient, right, in the initial outset. And that's what we set out to do, and that's what happened as we began developing our sensors. So our first sensors we developed were actual side-fire radars. So you set them up on the side of the freeway, and they detect out and watch the vehicles as they come through. Well, as we began developing them and getting better at it, we came up with the Smart Sensor HD. So this is up here on top here, and the Smart Sensor HD is a sensor that, just like this sensor right here, this is the newer version of it we'll get into in just a minute, the XP20. These two sensors are both side-fire radars, and they shoot across the road 220 feet, and they do side-fire detection with dual beams, right? It's HD dual beams, high-definition dual beams. And what that means is that they can actually watch the vehicle come in and exit that detection zone, and that tracks speed, length, and we can do classifications with that. So we know how fast they're traveling, we know how large the vehicles are, and we can give you a whole range of traffic data out on your roadways through these sensors. So these are used in data collection situations all over the world and country, and we're used in solar applications and all sorts of different ways. So any application you need on the ITS side, we absolutely have one for you with these two sensors. Aside from that, we're actually heavily involved in the traffic market as well. So to start with that, we have one sensor that actually just launched very recently. It's called the XP21. We call it our small system. This is designed to cover any of your small intersections where you're having a harder time justifying buying a full intersection, right? Maybe it's a smaller needs intersection, it's 3 lanes or less, but this one device will cover all approaches. So it's easy install, ease of use, very, very straightforward, but it gives you stop bar detection and it's highly accurate. So this is a great solution if you're looking for simple stop bar detection. If you need something a little more robust, one of the solutions we have is the Smart Sensor Matrix. This sensor, it actually goes out 140 feet and it's a 90-degree field of view. And what that sensor is doing is, it kind of looks like a piece of pie or a baseball field, right? And what it's doing is it's going out and it's watching the vehicles as they approach, and it has 16 different radar beams. And because of that, it's highly accurate, down to a 2-foot resolution. So it knows exactly where the vehicle is, how fast they're approaching, and where they're located on the road. And that allows us to do long zones, queue management, left turns. We can also manage count zones, red light running, all sorts of traffic applications at the stop bar. But then you also have the problem of dilemma zone protection, right? The actual clearance of the intersection and people approaching at high speeds. With that 140 feet, it's sometimes not enough to see the vehicles as they come in. So we also have a solution created for dynamic dilemma zone protection, and that's our Smart Sensor Advance. Our Advance can actually go out 900 feet and watch vehicles as they approach. And because it's range-based detection, it's firing every a couple milliseconds and it's going out and seeing those vehicles as they approach, and it brings them in and knows exactly what the ETA or their arrival time is at that intersection. And depending on how big that vehicle is, it has a unique or different stopping time. And so because the Smart Sensor Advance can differentiate those objects, we actually use this to do truck priority and make sure that normal cars can pass through as well, normal passenger vehicles. So the Smart Sensor Advance is an awesome solution for dilemma zone protection, right? Because it reduces accidents, red light running, things like that. But it also can do queue management. So if you have heavy build-ups of traffic that are kind of setting back from your intersection, even out past the matrix's range, you can put the Advance on there and it can watch them from hundreds of feet back and help you flush your queues. So all of these solutions are built to make your roads safer and more efficient, but that's not where we stopped, right? We have built onto that and tried to make it more efficient at the software level too, so we can add apps and things that help you make your roads safer even from the command center, right? And things you can do to quickly retime and manage that. So that's why we want to get into Crossroads today. And before I step over to Crossroads, I wanted to quickly mention too that Wavetronics is an American-based company, right? We are located right now today in Springville, Utah, and that's our headquarters. We manufacture all of our product out of here, and we are BABA compliant, Build America, Buy America. And so because of that, you can rest easy knowing that we care about quality because we build it right here. We don't receive shipments from overseas, and we make sure that we're building to the highest standards, and we can help you. And if you need RMAs or anything, field support, things like that, we're right here in the United States, and we're easily reachable. So you're not gonna have some call center that you have to worry about. We're right here in the United States. Okay, so now that I've given a brief introduction into Wavetronics, let's talk Crossroads. So here we are on Crossroads. This is the home screen of Crossroads. This is what it looks like when you open it up. You'll notice that in here, it has a bunch of different example animations. And so Crossroads is designed to allow you to build intersections however you need to do it, and you can overlay them right on the map at your location, right? Wherever you're at, that's where you can build it. So you can kind of model reality inside of Crossroads, which is really great. So today, the first thing I want to show you is actually a basic intersection. What are some of the features of Crossroads? What does it actually look like when I open the software itself? And then we'll start going through some of these quick automated versions so I can show you different benefits and things that it can show you on the fly, and also that you can build personally to custom suit your needs. So let me show you a blank intersection. So you just click on this large blank icon, and it'll pull up an intersection. Now here, it'll show me the road, and you can actually change the transparency of the field of view, whatever you're looking at, okay? And so you can see exactly what, wherever you wanna be. And you can actually take latitude and longitude coordinates straight from a Google Maps or an Apple Maps and load them in here, and you can jump wherever you want to. So right now I'm close by here in Utah on my location, so we'll just use that for now. And let's start building an intersection. So over on the left side in the tile bar, there's a couple different icons that you see. Road Builder is the top one. Then you see Items List, and if you slow hover over each one of the icons, you'll see what they are. Coordination Manager, we'll get into that a little later. Simulation Settings, you can fiddle with your settings. And then the Cost Calculator. Because one of the cool things that Crossroads can do is it can actually, you can put intersections head to head. So without actually having to do that in the real world and having simultaneous levels of equipment installed, right, like loops and radar together, you can actually just run a simulation on what it looks like with static loop detection, and then what would happen if you put in dynamic zones, right? If you put in zones that actually can do more than just a little footprint of wherever your loop is located. And so today we're going to take a look at a lot of those different scenarios and see if this can be a benefit to you and your agency and how Crossroads could help you. So let's start by building an intersection. So if you go to Road Builder, it pulls up all these different icons, and I won't go through every single one of these, but some of these are very important in what I'm doing today. So Add Signalized Intersection is what you start with. So you hit that little traffic light, and then you just click on the middle of your intersection, and then it'll pop up this Road Builder, right? Create an intersection icon. And so at this point, we can actually look and match our road. So if I put this aside a little bit and I zoom in on my roadway, I'll zoom out just real quick, come down closer on my road. I'm going to bring this back in, and then we will click on our roadway and put it aside. So now I see that I have 3 lanes approaching, right? So I'll add a lane here, I'll add a lane here, and then you have to change the direction of the lane itself. So if they're straight throughs, if they're just left, if they're right turn. So here I'm going to put this one to straight, and this one is a straight and a right. This over here, there's also 3 lanes. I'll put that one as well to just straight. And then if you come over here, same thing. Put that one to straight, and then each direction looks like it does have 3 approaches. So there we go. And then I had pre-looked at this and saw what speeds these were at. And so here on this roadway, it actually was 30 miles an hour. So these side roads, it's 30 miles an hour because it's approaching kind of from a rural area. And then here, it's a little higher speed because it's on a larger road, right? So this one's actually at 45 miles an hour and 45 miles an hour. You can also change settings like the length of the intersection, so you can show it longer. So if you need to actually build longer zones or whatever it may be, you can do that, no problem. You just change that right here. And you can also do bulk changes right here to intersection settings. So all of those things are options you can do to build your intersection, format it, and make it match reality, okay? So now I'll create this, and my road pops on. So now that it's on here, you can see that it goes 500 feet back. It kind of overlays over the road, actually looks like reality, and we can see what that's actually looking like. So as I look at this, let's see these zones down here. So on the road, if you click on it, you can actually see, I'll start here at the controller actually. So if you click in the middle of the intersection, it gives you a couple options. You can see the phase map, you can see the controller, you can rebuild your intersection, you can actually bulk load different settings. So if you format an intersection and it's kind of complex, you can load that in from a save file, which is kind of a nice time-saving feature. But let's go into the controller settings. So this actually mimics a controller, right? This is kind of like playing with a real controller in this virtual intersection that we've just created. So as you look at some of the settings, you can massage the minimum green, the maximum green. Your passage time is always a great way to look at ways to gain efficiency, especially if you have good detection that's bringing it all the way through and not just in one single zone. You can trust that that sensor or that detection is watching that vehicle, because one thing you'll have happen, we see a lot, is say you have 150 feet back, people are turning into McDonald's, and you keep tripping a detection that gives them a 6-second extension time, and the people never make it to the intersection. They're stopping at the gas station, they're stopping at a store, right, at a Macy's or whatever it may be. So you never know what they're stopping at. But the good thing is if you have dynamic detection, you can lower your passage time and get more accurate detections, right? So you can mess with your passage time, your yellow change time, your red clearance, all of that can be fiddled with, and recall mode as well. So if you need to go none, minimum, or max, you can change all of that, right? If you want to do simple timing, all of that can be done. So you can update your settings right there, and then it loads in, and that's up to date and that's ready. Okay, so now that I have this, let's look at these zones. So if I click on one of these, I can actually go to static detection zones, and I see that I already have a detection zone of 65 feet. Well, in this scenario, let's compare it to something else. That's more of a standard application for a Wavetronics setup, right? For like our matrix that I was talking about earlier, we can do up to the 120, 130 feet long zones. But in this scenario, let's start with a 10-foot zone that's more in kind of almost like a loop setup, right? So the nice thing too is there's bulk updates. So instead of having to manually click and place each one of those zones all the way across the road, I can actually just bulk update and add 10 feet zones all the way across. So anything that matches my criteria of the 65 feet before, as I update that, they all change to that, right? So it's pretty smooth, pretty snappy. And now I actually want to create a duplication of this intersection, because now at this point I can't actually show the benefit of what's happening until I create something else. So if I go to create benefit analysis, it'll give me just some knowledge to know that you can't actually go back to the old intersection and edit it once you've left. So you just want to make sure you have everything sorted before you leave this spot. Okay, so now I've created my benefit intersection, and now it looks over here, okay? So now because these are all the same, I can do that same thing that I did before. I can do that bulk update kind of in reverse. So I'm going to go to 80 feet this time, and I'm just going to go bulk update, and then click OK, update. And now you'll notice I have 10-foot zones over here, 80-foot zones over here, okay? So now I have long zones, and I can compare those actively. Well, to really get a good comparison and to know if I'm getting actual improvements on this, just changing the long zone in and of itself sometimes won't give you that much of a benefit. So sometimes you want to go to your controller, and because it's dynamic and we're following you all the way through to the intersection, it makes sense sometimes to change your passage time. So real quick, I'm going to update all those. I think we're working on an update right now to get the bulk feature working on this, but we'll just go across here, and on all the different phases, I'll place a 1 second time. So as I get this done, I'm almost there. There we go. So all my passage time is now at 1 second, okay? And then I'll update that, and that will just make it more efficient. So every time there's a call, it only holds it until the second that vehicle does not need it anymore, right? Instead of giving 3-second extension every single time, because sometimes you'll have people speeding through and they only needed a ½ second to clear, and you just gave them 3 to 5 seconds, right? So sometimes that doesn't make sense. So now that I have this set up, let me show you how we actually compare these intersections. So I'm done building, and let's just go into the testing mode. So this is where it gets kind of fun. Okay, so in here we have something called a cost-benefit calculator, right? The benefit calculator is designed to show you all the different things that can be saved in the public's hands, right? So into the public pocket, you can give them back savings, right? Just by making changes at your intersections. Because if they're not spending time idling and burning gas, if they're not spending time emitting CO2, right? All of these things end up costing money, and then people's time is worth money too, right? If they're getting somewhere, their time is worth something. And so if you end up trapping them at intersections for 10, 15 minutes at a time, it gets really frustrating and people get upset and they're wasting their time, right? And so the faster you can move people through corridors and they make it where they're expecting to go, it's a big benefit. So each one of these things has time associated or dollar figures associated with it. So if I go into this one, you may ask, how do you calculate these numbers, right? Where do they come from? Well, the beauty of this is we actually have some of this stuff right inside of here. So on this one that I'm looking at right now, it's actually fuel savings, right? It shows the gallons per hour that get used and then the dollars per gallon. And so based on people stopping at that intersection, how much gas they're using and how much that fuel actually costs. So depending on where you're located in the country, whether it's up or down, you can adjust the dollars per gallon to match reality. And you can also fiddle with that gallons per hour. And then you may ask, where do we get some of this information? Well, we actually get this information from the federal highways, FHWA. So if you hit over here and you go to reset to default, you'll actually see that there was a study done in 2022, and it was titled Quantifying Benefits of Traffic Signal Retiming. And so in the FHWA, right, our Federal Highway Administration, they actually came up with some benefit or some actual amounts to help calculate what we're spending and what we're actually doing on the roadway on a standard basis. And so we use those numbers to create these cost-benefit analyses, okay? We can answer questions later if anyone wants to know more about that. Okay, so now that I have that basic understanding, let's start a simulation. And before I get going on that too, you can actually, this is really cool. If you actually have detection in the road and you have count numbers and you feel fairly good about them, you can actually load those count numbers in and place them onto your intersection, right? And so just for this example, I'm just gonna put the traffic up to 150 per lane and I'm gonna bulk edit. So everything in this table goes to 150. So this is about, this is a little higher volume on some of those turn movements maybe, but let's see how dynamic long zones actually manage this, okay? Let's see if there's an actual benefit. So I'm gonna activate that and then I'm gonna close this out. And now that I'm back here, you'll notice there's a little play button at the bottom. And so with this play button, you can start running traffic. So this is going really slow, right? So let's put it to speed 2, and let's zoom out just a little bit so we can see a little better. And I can close this so we have a better view. So we can watch all the vehicles come in. You see them come through the intersection, you see the phases change. One of the cool things about this program as well is if you wanted to, you could actually teach signal phasing through this. If you have new employees or technicians or things that you want to train, you actually can train people through this with this because you can show how there's co-phases, split phases, conflicting phases. All of that can be shown at a live intersection and you can actually play with those settings and make sure you have everything in order. So now we've seen that flow a little bit at a slow pace, so let's speed it up a little bit. So now you can go up to 10 and you can actually go to max. So now you'll see that the traffic is really flowing through, right? It's coming through quick and we can see what's going on. But now that we've run for a minute, let's go over and look at our calculator. So you can actually watch the benefits happen live. And sometimes if you set up the intersection and it will go into the negative if you do it wrong. And so in this one, I kind of knew that some of these things add benefits. And so I knew that it would help us out a little bit. And so now we can actually get a report out of this that you could take to show to your manager or whoever it may be. And you can go by the different settings of live, hourly, daily, and yearly, okay? So now that I have yearly, let's look at what we'd actually see. So once you stop your calculation, you can export the PDF and you can actually see what you would get on the year. And so it'll come up with a report. You can choose the location to save it. And now I'll just open this real quick. And I can see on this benefit report, I am saving yearly $35,000 at this one location. So if you think about that, this is something that can extrapolate and begin to mushroom into your city, right? If every single one of your intersections had long zones, you could save your driving public $35,000 spread across all the different drivers, right? But if every single intersection throughout your system had these same benefits calculated and installed, all of this can add to improved roads and improved savings, okay? So that's kind of one of the great benefits of what we're doing here at Wavetronics, right? With Crossroads, it's cool to actually see the numbers you could save if you made these improvements. Now, you actually have the controller settings that you could actually screenshot or export, and you would have an exact list of things you could do to improve your intersection if you match it to the detection. Okay, so now that I've shown you kind of a basic intersection with some long zone benefits, let's go on and let's go look at some other examples. Now imagine out there are intersections that are more isolated. There are things that are a little bit more kind of off on their own and maybe they don't have detection, right? Maybe you straight up are going off of timing and you're trying to figure out what you want to do to improve that intersection. Well, if you have any place with timing, you can actually go to in the stop bar, and you can actually look at this actuated example. And this is a really cool one to show the same thing. So I'm going to open this up and I'll show you some of the concepts behind it. So down at this intersection, if I open it up and I look down here, there's actually no detection areas, right? Those little blue zones that we saw before, none of those are showing here. But if I go into the controller, I can see what's going on. So this has 0 seconds of passage time because there is no passage time, right? It just changes based on max recall. So if you look down at recall, it's at max, okay? So that's one of the settings that's changed there, and it's just the minimum green time, maximum green time, 15 seconds every single time. It never changes, okay? Now, let's say over here, let's see what we're doing over here. So on our controller, our max green time can go up to 55 seconds, our minimum down to 5. We now have passage time put in. There's a yellow change. The recall is actually at none, right? So we want to let the dynamic detection manage the entire process. We don't want to trust timing anymore. We want it to be reality-based and based on flow and demand of the traffic. And so that's what's been updated here, and that's what we're gonna go off of. So let's see what that actually looks like, right? And then one of the things too, if you'll notice here, we actually loaded in some numbers that are more accurate to the flows of the traffic. So you're gonna have high volume on your main lines, you're gonna have lesser volume on the turn lanes and the side movements. So that kind of gives you an idea of what we're actually looking like in the parameters. Okay, so now let's start this and see what actually happens. So I'm gonna close this again so I don't have to look at it, and we will go play. One thing I forgot to mention is there's a tutorial mode. So if you're just learning how to use Crossroads, one of the great things is you can actually get a walkthrough on what's going on, how it works, and if you don't have someone looking over your shoulder helping you, there's actually tutorials inside the program, and you can click through and learn how to do it as you go. So that's a really nice feature as you're learning Crossroads. So then let's just get it moving for a sec so we can kind of see it come through. We can see that this one's maxing out. And you see that this one is dynamically serving as people are needed, right? In those left turns, in those straight movements, everything's kind of being served as needed. So we like that. That's a good improvement already. And now let's go back down to our little caret and go to max, okay? So we'll get the traffic moving. We'll back out just a little bit so we can see a little better. And we notice, I mean, it's kind of hard to say when you're moving this quick exactly what looks better at the point, but sometimes you have to actually run tons of simulations, right? And instead of, imagine not having to do this at your road, at your intersection, you can actually time all this back at your comfy from your desk. You can do all of these calculations and then come out with new numbers, new plans, and see if you can actually make real improvements on your roads, right? And we've proven that the engineers who've done this, they actually do. This actually works. Okay, so now let's go back to our cost-benefit analysis and see if we're positive. It looks like we are so far. Well, let's go to yearly, and we'll do the same thing that I did before, where we'll export this benefit report, and we'll see what our actual total is. So I've got an actuated yearly report. I'm going to open that, yes, place that, and close this. Okay, so now if I look here, I actually am at $120,000 in savings, right, over the course of the year. That's actually pretty significant. If you think of what you could actually improve by, you think of, oh, we're saving money by just using timing. Well, let's say we've put in a bunch of new subdivisions, there's new apartments or townhomes that just came in. Your traffic just went up, right? What if there's a new Home Depot or some new shopping center that just got put in the neighborhood? All of that increases your traffic and makes there a need to retime, to do something different, right? And so at worst case scenario, you actually starting to save your people money and increase that flow, and then you can dynamically adapt to the increase in traffic. So you don't have to sit there and every month, oh my, the traffic was bad this month, what are we gonna do? The holiday shoppers are coming. All of that can be managed through, you can retime it here and look at what changes you could make, and maybe you need to upgrade your detection to do that, right? But you could know this just by looking at Crossroads. So there's another example of a huge savings that we can get just by changing from timing to actuated signal, right? So we'll close this one, and you can always save your progress, right? If you ever want to save intersections, you can keep them so you can show them to other people and show them what you were doing and what settings you had. Now I'm going to show you what it looks like to do dynamic dilemma zone. So I talked about that earlier with our smart sensor advance, right? So that sensor is going way down the road, watching vehicles approach, and a lot of the ways that it's done now is people just set a virtual loop or an actual loop in the road, 300, 350 feet out, depending on where they calculate that stop bar, and they'll automatically trigger 3 to 6 seconds of passage time to say, okay, every time a vehicle passes this, we're gonna watch them come through, and that's what we're gonna give them to get in, okay? Well, one of the things that we can compare to is dynamic dilemma zone, right? Just setting a huge zone out on the road and saying, I want this whole area protected. Let me see how I can increase my efficiencies and what can be done better here. Okay, so now I'm going to go down here to 6 seconds dynamic. let's just look at what this looks like. I'm going to go close this and play. Okay, so now if I look at this road, and let's get this car coming in a little faster. If you look at what this is showing, I'll just pause this real quick. Oh, yeah, I'll come back just a hair. On this vehicle, as it comes through, the vehicle that's down on the road right here actually has a count time of how long it's spending at the intersection each time it's coming through. So I'm going to start this animation over, and let's do this one more time. So as this vehicle comes through the dynamic dilemma zone, you'll see that it's green, right? And it's watching it through and knows, and then it starts to count how long this vehicle has stopped at the stop bar. And you'll see that right as that vehicle was coming through, it actually made it through on yellow. And then as it comes through, that vehicle spent about 10 seconds before it got to roll out of the intersection. And so you look at and think about that, the increase in efficiency that you can get by dynamically holding it until the second it doesn't need it anymore, because then you can release that call. Instead of sitting there and holding for an extra 6 seconds, that car can just go when it's time, right? If there's no one else to serve on the road, they get to go. And so these are some of the things that you can add as a benefit with Dynamic Dilemma Zone. And let's see if there's any controller benefits here as we look here. So our passage time is actually at 0 seconds, right? So the second that car is not needed in the dilemma zone anymore, it gets released. And so our controller is free and clear to let the signal change. So that's a huge benefit, super simple to use, and you don't actually have to figure out what the dilemma zone is. You just let the sensor do the work. The dynamic dilemma zone protector in the Advance is that smart, right? It can do all of that for you. So that's a great benefit, and you can prove that to people if they don't believe you, right? You can actually show them the benefit without actually having it physically in your roadway. If you need better advanced detection, we are very capable of doing that, but you can show that to people through Crossroads, right? You can actually show that benefit and see it live. So now that I've shown you that, let's go over to a permissive protected left turn. So a lot of times when we're doing permissive turns, right, or just protected turns, you have to serve a phase of a turn movement and watch. Everybody else just sits and watches. And sometimes you're actually serving people that aren't there, right? So if that's pre-timed or that's pre-scheduled or there's a kind of a minimum time on that, you end up serving people that don't actually need it. So let's go into operational elements and let's look at permissive left benefits. So in here, right, you can see here, this is just a, this intersection actually has long zones already, which is good. It has, it knows if there's vehicles there, it knows if it should serve that phase, so that's nice. But then over here, we actually notice that they have these yellow arrows on this one. So if I click onto this and I go into Road Builder real quick, I can actually rebuild this road and I can look at these. So this one actually says, if I hover over, it says protected permissive left, okay? So protected permissive left means that it is going to give a left turn, right? A protected left turn, and then as soon as that turn is done, as soon as it's given enough time, it's going to change to a flashing yellow arrow. And then it will dynamically do this based on the needs of the traffic. And then the beautiful thing about this, if you have the right detection, you can do a latched call where you can say, okay, until I have 3 vehicles in this zone, I don't actually need to have a protected permissive turn. So let's just actually watch what this looks like for a minute, because this is a huge increase in efficiency if we can see it live. So let's see what it looks like when I go back into my simulation mode. I'll turn off that tutorial and we'll play this. So we're just going to let it play for a sec, see some cars come in. There's one coming in on either side. So now I see that my 2 left turns came in. People coming in the straight. We're just serving so far, so straight. And then if you see right there, we actually had just a second ago, there, I'll see if I can find one again. I'll stop it as soon as I see one. Whenever it goes to a permissive turn and people can turn on red, or if there's a phase that's going, there it is right there. So if I look at the road and I see these hash marks, that means that you have a permissive turn allowed, that people can go on a flashing yellow, right? And so it shows that there's technically a conflict in the phase, and you could see how there could be some sort of safety issue, right? There could be if people aren't managing and using it right and they don't understand the signal. But if it's set up properly, at this point, hopefully the traffic has kind of flowed out, and then you can allow them to safely cross into across traffic to let themselves out of the intersection. And so this allows the intersection to self-serve and let people out exactly when they need. And if you're just a single car, to not give them their own green phase. They just have to make it through on yellow or at the end of the phase right before it closes into red, right? And so this is something, let's see if there's actually a benefit to this. Does it actually save us money or time, right? Or is it better to just do raw detection? So let's see. So I'm going to speed this up. We'll go to max. Let this run for a sec. You watch all this traffic come through. You notice that it seems to flow in and out of these pretty well. So let's see if there's actually a real benefit here. Let's go into here. So the good news is this seems positive, 0.08 cents per driver, right, per vehicle. So that's the per vehicle settings over here, but then you look at the vehicle hours, the gallons, it's starting to tick up. And then if I change this to yearly, we can start to see, wow, this just went into the 400,000. So that's one of the higher ones I've actually ever seen. And I think that one of the reasons this is so high is that it allows people to flow through even when they're not technically given their own phase, right? It allows the road to clear in all directions and you're not having cars just sitting idle, which ends up being a huge benefit over the year. So this is an awesome example of a great way to add efficiency and allow your road to be better, right? I think to finish this out, one of the coolest features of Crossroads is to actually show a coordinated intersection. Right now I've just been showing you isolated intersections at a single point in time, nothing terribly fancy about that, but it shows every intersection needs some sort of attention to be better, right? So now that we've talked about the isolated intersections, right, our permissive left turns, our dynamic dilemma zone, our actuated versus timed, let's look at what it actually would look like if we did a coordinated section, right? Sometimes you don't have the budget to do adaptive software. Sometimes you don't have the resource to manage an adaptive intersection, right? Or intersections. And so what we've done here in Crossroads is allowed you to actually simulate what it would look like if you coordinated your intersections and what kind of offsets you would need to get that green wave, right? We talk about it here at Wavetronics, where you want all the traffic that comes in to flow and you want to minimize your arrivals on red and you want to maximize your arrivals on green, right? Everyone's happy when they get that green wave. There's nothing that feels better. So that's something we're trying to help you obtain. So there's a bunch of different examples at the bottom here of coordination, right? So let's go into urban streets. Let's just see what that looks like. So here on this map, you'll see it's kind of a lot to look at, but there's actually 3 intersections, okay? And they're all connected. And one of the things we do to manage this is we actually put in a mid-block location so you can actually see the flow of traffic, the classification of the vehicles, the counts, and you know exactly what's heading from intersection to intersection. So you can kind of do the pass off of the data. And so if you, in an ideal setup, you could use some of our like XP20 sensor or our HD sensor, and you can actually detect at the mid-block and know what's coming to the next intersection before it gets there, besides just the pass off at the intersection. So now that we have this set up, we have 3 intersections, they're all connected, and we can actually look at what happens when you try to run these intersections together, okay? So if I start playing this, you'll see that vehicles come in. Let's just run it fast so we can see vehicles come through. So they start at the ends and then they feed through and they come in from the side streets too. And so all of this starts to feed together, right? And you can start to see what it would look like if you actually were to do this, right? And so let's go here to our coordination groups. So one of the things that has to be done to properly do coordination is you have to show, you have to put them in groups, right? So you can actually have different groups of intersections. You can put this coordinated highway over here, this coordinated roadway down here, and you can have different groups, but they have to work together, right? They have to be in the same group to be on that coordinated section, okay? So now if I go to the coordination view, I get to see this really cool diagram. So let me open this up a little more and see if I can zoom out. So if I look at this big X band that I'm seeing over on the screen, you'll see that there's a green bandwidth, which is the outbound, and a blue, which is inbound. And if you have a perfect cross, right, if it's like that crossroad, right, that perfect crossroad, you'll see that huge flow out, huge flow in. So everything that comes in flows right out on green. And wherever that crosses over and how that shows, you get to kind of see what that looks like. And one of the things you can do with this is you can actually use these offset sliders. So over here you can see at your different, so I think the intersections are named like X1, X2. And so to be able to see what's actually happening at these intersections, you can adjust the offset and see what happens. So this one, XR2, or XR1 is set at 30 seconds and this one's set at 0 seconds. Well, maybe I want to see if I fiddle with that and I actually reduce my offset or increase it, what happens? Well, look. if I if I actually put farther offset in here, I actually reduce my green band, my out band and my inbound band, and I reduce the amount of traffic that gets through because I'm not allowing enough time for the vehicles to travel between the two intersections, right? And my offsets are off. And so if I increase my offset over here, you think that increasing it might help? Well, sometimes it actually hurts, right? And so you kind of have to find that balance of where it needs to be in order to get that optimum level of travel through. So the vision of this long term in Crossroads is to allow you to show a coordinated system and manage that by knowing how big to set your offsets, knowing the timing of your intersections, improving all of the different detections that you have placed on the road, and optimizing your road. And the beauty of this is if you notice that 10 times or that max time, it's going 250 times a second. You're seeing what's happening, and so it is speeding up reality by a huge factor. And so if you can do that, you can save time. And by saving time, you save all that effort of going out on the road and waiting weeks at a time for setting a timing plan. You can actually just do quick tests in your office within a half hour. You can come out with multiple different timing plans or different strategic plans to get different detection put in, right? Because you can prove the benefit. You can prove the cost savings for the public. And then in the end, you'll end up saving yourself money and time and phone calls because you won't have upset customers and you won't have people getting upset with what you're doing. So in the end, Crossroads is an awesome software. I actually am pretty impressed with what it's been. If you're interested in Crossroads, there's kind of different levels. So Crossroads Premium contains our coordination features, right? All of the things that I just showed you with the offsets and different things and building corridors and managing all that. You can actually put up to 10 intersections on a single corridor. So that's a cool feature. Premium is $2,000. And then if you want to go to our just Crossroads normal, that is $1,000, and that gives you quite a bit of features, right? You can do a lot of the different things we did, the actuated, some of the timing, the tutorial type things, dynamic dilemma zone, permissive protective. You can do all of that. And then there is a basic version as well. It's a free version that allows people in your agency, if you build an intersection, you can pass it to them and let them see what you've built. So they can see the intersection, they can open it, they just can't make edits to that intersection, but they can see what it would look like. So all three of those different levels allow you to get Crossroads at whatever level you would need it for. And it is a per head license. And one of the things to know about that is if you buy Crossroads, you'd get 2 years of free updates. And it is a lifetime purchase. It's not a subscription base. So you will have that software for life, but you will receive support and updates for 2 years on that license without having to upgrade or do anything else. But if you down the road want more features or want different things that we've launched into Crossroads, at the 2 year point you would stop receiving new updates and benefits. Thank you for joining today and learning about Crossroads. We're so happy that you took the time to learn about this solution. If there's anything we can do to help you see if you do want Crossroads and if you'd like to learn more, we're happy to set up demos. We can do virtual demos. We can come to you and show it. And we can also you can purchase it from us by contacting us. So please let us know if you would like Crossroads and if we can help you use it. We appreciate your time and have a great day. Thank you.